Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another episode of Friendly Friday, a weekly series where we take a look at budget, standard or modern decks, and this week we're gonna battle with blue-black pirates in standard, a deck featuring a lot of the cards from Ixalan. So let's dive right into it here, starting out with our 1-drops, where we have 4 copies of Siren Stormtamer, a 1-mana 1/1 flyer, of course a pirate, and we can pay a blue, sacrifice a Stormtamer to counter target spell or ability that targets us or a creature we control, so nice early play to pressure the opponent with, and then later in the game it can perhaps trade with one of the opponent's removal spells. Then we also have 1 main deck copy of Duress along with a few copies in the sideboard to take a look at the opponent's hand, choose a non-creature non-land card and make them discarded, so another way to clear a path for our creatures by taking away removal spells. Then our own removal spell of choice is 4 copies of Fatal Push to destroy target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less, and with Revolt enabled, converted mana cost 4 or less. Don't really have any Revolt enablers in the deck besides the Siren Stormtamer that we can sacrifice, so we kind of have to rely on our opponent killing our creatures or on combat damage killing one of our creatures. Then we also have 4 copies of Metallic Mimic, which is a 2-mana 2/1. It's a shapeshifter, but as it enters the battlefield we can choose a creature type, which is going to be pirate in our case, so the Metallic Mimic will be a pirate in addition to its other types, and whenever we play a pirate, when it enters the battlefield, we can put a +1/+1 counter on it, which is very powerful, especially with our pirates that generate additional pirates. And Metallic Mimic synergizes nicely with our next pirate, which is Skyship Plunderer, a 2-mana 2/1 flyer, which is not actually from Ixalan but from Aether Vault, but it's still a pirate. And Skyship Plunderer is worded kind of strangely here whenever it deals combat damage to a player to make it work with energy counters, but in our deck that doesn't really matter, so basically it comes down to when Skyship Plunderer deals combat damage to a player, you can choose a creature with a +1/+1 counter that you control and put an additional +1/+1 counter on it, so that's why it works nicely with our Metallic Mimic. Next up is another big payoff card for being in a pirate's deck. We've got Fathom Fleet Captain as a 2-mana 2/1 with Menace, which is already decent by itself, but it doesn't stop there, because whenever Fathom Fleet Captain attacks, if you control another non-token pirate, you can pay 2 mana, and if you do, you can make a 2/2 black pirate creature token with Menace, and if you have a Metallic Mimic in play, that token will become a 3/3, so that adds up very quickly. And next up we have 4 copies of Kitesail Freebooter, another way to disrupt the opponent's hand, as a 2-mana 1/2 flyer. When the Freebooter enters the battlefield, you can take a look at the opponent's hand and then choose a non-creature non-land card and exile it under the Freebooter until the Freebooter leaves the battlefield, then the opponent will get that card back. But of course our goal is to make sure that the opponent never gets that card back by protecting our Freebooter with our Stormtamers or by taking away removal spells with the Freebooter or with Duress. Next up we have 2 copies of Fell Flagship, which has this nice static ability giving all our pirates +1/+0, which is a big deal with all our small evasive pirates like Siren Stormtamers or Kitesail Freebooters. Giving them an additional point of power really makes a difference, and of course we can crew Fell Flagship to turn it into a creature if we tap a total of 3 or more power, and then when Fell Flagship deals combat damage to a player, that player has to discard a card, so that also combines nicely with one of the cards we'll get to in a second. Then we also have 4 main deck counterspells in the form of Lookout's Dispersal, 3 mana for an instant that counters target spell unless its controller pays 4, which is not an easy thing to do, so most of the time Lookout's Dispersal is just a hard counter. But the nice thing here is that if you control a pirate, Lookout's Dispersal costs 1 generic mana less, which turns it into a better version of Mana Leak, which is already a very powerful card. Next up we have 3 copies of Ruin Raider as our card advantage engine, which does a nice Dark Confidant impression. It's a 3-mana 3/2 with Raid that says at the beginning of your end step, if a creature you control attacked this turn, you can reveal the top card of your library and then put that card into your hand and you lose life equal to that card's converted mana cost. But in a deck with a low curve like this one, you're not gonna lose a lot of life and you're gonna end up drawing a lot of extra cards. Then we have 2 copies of Dreamcaller Siren as a 4-mana 3/3 with Flash and Flying, can only block other creatures with Flying, but when the Siren enters the battlefield, if you control another pirate, you can tap up to 2 target non-land permanents, so most of the time that's going to be 2 creatures, and that means that it combines very nicely with Fell Flagship, since if you can curve a pirate into Fell Flagship into Dreamcaller Siren, Then on turn 4 you can play out the Siren, tap 2 of the opponent's creatures, and then use the Siren to crew the Fell Flagship to make sure that it connects and the opponent doesn't have any blockers, and then you can make the opponent discard a card by connecting with the Fell Flagship. So that's a nice 2-3-4 combo. And finally we have 2 copies of Hostage Taker as a 4 mana 2-3. When it enters the battlefield it can exile a creature or artifact until Hostage Taker leaves the battlefield, but in the meantime you can also cast that creature or artifact to make sure that you get to keep it even if the opponent kills the Hostage Taker. Then the mana base is pretty simple, 8 swamps, 8 islands, 4 Fetid Pools which we can cycle, and 4 copies of Drowned Catacomb. And then the sideboard real quick, we've got some counter spells in the form of Spell Pierce, Jace's Defeat, and 3 copies of Negate. We've got the Deadeye Tracker to answer graveyard decks by exiling cards from the graveyard. We've got 3 copies of Duress against mostly combo and control decks, 2 copies of Walk the Plank as additional removal, and finally 2 copies of Vraska's Contempt as an additional answer to the gods and a way to gain some life against the aggressive decks. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw, and I think we'll keep. We've got 2 lands to get things started. Can play out a Plunderer, and then hopefully draw into some more lands to play out our 3-drops. Opponent with tapped farmlands, so it could be a control deck. Alright, let's play out the Fetid Pools so that our Catacombs come into play untapped. Inspiring Vantage, so our opponent's on some sort of Jeskai deck. We're just gonna run out the Plunderer. Alright, no removal spell end of turn. Spiral of Canal. Opponent with perfect mana here, but no plays. Interesting. I think we wanna attack for 2. And then we can see if we wanna run out Ruin Raider or if we wanna play it slow. And maybe run out a Siren Stormtamer, keep up Lookout's Dispersal. Opponent with Farm, destroying target attacking creature. So I think that's fine, and then we can just play out a Ruin Raider. Could also just Lookout's Dispersal, but getting to draw a card here with our Ruin Raider seems pretty good. So we'll just let that happen, and then play out the Ruin Raider. And we did attack with a creature, so we do get to draw a card here. Find another Ruin Raider, nice. Search for Azcanta resolves. And a tap land, so our opponent won't have a lot of interaction here. So this seems like a nice window to resolve our Fell Flagship. Give our Ruin Raider an additional point of power. And then we can maybe also run out a Siren Stormtamer. Opponent then might play something like a Fumigate, but then we can follow up with another Ruin Raider, crew the Fell Flagship, make the opponent discard a card. That seems pretty good. So let's hit for 4. And then play out Stormtamer. Pass it back. And then let's see what we draw. Just the Fetid Pools, nice, so it doesn't cost us any life. Land number 5. And this is a Fumigate. It is, alright, so all going according to plan here. Find a Hostage Taker, which is probably not great in this matchup, but we're just gonna continue with our plan. Run out Ruin Raider. Crew the Fell Flagship. And then get in for 3, make the opponent discard. And we also get to draw a card from Raid. Opponent discards a cast out, so that's relevant. And then we'll just play out a tapped Fetid Pools, since we could use the additional mana. Draw a Catacomb, that's nice. So let's see if the opponent finds an answer to our Fell Flagship here. 4 cards in the graveyard for Search for Azcanta. And a Drakehaven to play. Well, can't use our counterspell here since our land came into play tapped. So Drakehaven could be a problem, but we still have our Siren to potentially tap down the Drakes to prevent them from blocking. And I think we just crew the Fell Flagship and get in for 3 rather than 4, just to not expose a Ruin Raider to any drakes blocking it. Although I guess we can just Fatal Push a Drake as well. But yeah, let's just crew. And the opponent can make a Drake when they do end up discarding to the Fell Flagship, since Drakehaven also specifies discarding a card. But that's fine. So let's attack for a 3. Opponent did have a cast out they can cycle here, but if they make a Drake now, that means that they won't be able to make a Drake when they end up discarding. So now we can Fatal Push, and the opponent will end up discarding and not having any Drakes in play. Alright, so we're in a decent spot here, but our opponent will be able to transform their Search for Azcanta soon. Drew another Swamp. So Search for Azcanta transforms. Opponent is gonna cast Market, so draw 2, discard 2. So they could end up making 2 Drakes by discarding 2 cards here, so I think we actually wanna use our Lookout's Dispersal on that. And our opponent has a Field of Ruin, so they can still use Azcanta. Alright, so end of turn we'll just cycle the Fetid Pools. Find a Fathom Fleet Captain, so I think this is a good spot to just main phase the Dreamcaller Siren to crew the Fell Flagship. Or we can Hostage Taker plus Captain, but then we're pretty exposed to a sweeper effect. Then we'll crew the Flagship. And then get in for 7. And just pass a turn here, don't want to commit more creatures. And drew another land from our Ruin Raider, so he's been kind to us. Opponent uses Azcanta, let's see what they find. Found another farm to markets, so that's a way for them to kill one of our attacking creatures. Alright, and our opponent concedes, so the farm to market was not enough. So on to sideboarding against the control deck, wanna take out our hostage takers, and Fatal Push is not great even though it can kill a Drake token. Bring in our negates, our Jace's Defeat, Spell Pierce, and Duresses are good. And then we can still take out 2 more cards. And I think we actually want to shave on Metallic Mimic, since that forces us to overextend with our creatures. And try something like this. Alright, this hand looks pretty good. We've got a Spell Pierce for a Search for Azcanta on turn 2. Some threats and some counterspells, so that's generally a good mix. That's an interesting twist. I think we just say go and try to Spell Pierce a Search for Azcanta rather than playing out the Stormtamer on 1. Alright, no play from the opponent. So now we could run out to Stormtamer and still keep up Spell Pierce, or we can just run out to Mimic into a potential Censor. I think I like running out to Stormtamer here, playing around Censor and keeping up Spell Pierce. Opponent still not playing out anything. Alright, I think we hit for 1 and then either play Ruin Raider or keep up some more counterspells. Opponent takes it, so I think we want to play out the Metallic Mimic here. Still play around Censor. And it could be that we should have kept in all Mimics and maybe taken out the Skyship Plunderer instead. Opponent still not doing anything. Well, Kitesail Freebooter is a nice one, so I think we start by attacking and then playing the Freebooter, since we do have the counterspell for a potential Settle the Wreckage anyways. So let's attack. Opponent takes it. And let's go ahead and play the Freebooter. opponent disallows. So we could Spell Pierce here, and I think we do, just because it's unlikely their opponent has multiple sweepers, and then we can just take the one sweeper with the Freebooter. Alright, so they have Lightning Strike, Chandra, Pull from Tomorrow, Settle, but they don't have any red mana, so don't need to worry too much about red cards. And I think we just take the Settle the Wreckage here, since if our opponent draws a second copy, that could be a problem. If we leave them with the Settle, negate it, and they have a second one. Opponent plays out a farmland, so we untap. And yeah, I think we just get in with everyone, put our opponent to 11. And then we have the option of playing out the Rune Raider or the Captain. I think we go with the Rune Raider. Gets a counter, raid, we get the draw card, find another Freebooter. And just want to keep up Negate to counter a potential Fumigate here. If our opponent casts Pull for 2, we just let that resolve, I think. Instead they cycle an irrigated farmland. Still haven't found any red mana. And a lot of the red mana is also fast land, so those come into play tapped this late in the game. Opponent with a cast out, which we could negate. But I think we actually let that happen, since they likely want to exile the Freebooter, and then we can just Freebooter again to take the Settle again, so... Another Stormtamer, so let's attack. Could have also sacrificed the Stormtamer, I guess, but again, no real reason to, since we can just replay the Freebooter. And see a hand with double Settle, but they can only cast one. So let's just take the Lightning Strike in case our opponent rips an untapped red source off the top. I think we can cycle this. Alright, untap. And I think we just attack and negate. And their opponent probably knows what's up, but they have to try anyways. Alright, we got there, managed to beat Jeskai cycling, so on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And this hand's a little awkward with the two tap lands, but I think we still keep. And then hope to draw into a basic or a Drowned Catacomb. Otherwise we're a bit slow out of the gate. Opponent with Ether Hub into a tune, so it looks like an energy deck. Alright, we drew the Catacomb, nice. So we have the option of leading with Fathom Fleet Captain, Freebooter or Metallic Mimic. Think we lead with Metallic Mimic here, since the Captain's not gonna make a token anytime soon. And the upside's highest on the Metallic Mimic staying in play. And then we can save the Freebooter for later. Opponent's got a turn 2 Servant of the Conduit, so it just looks like a stock Temur energy deck. Alright, Fell Flagship is an interesting twist. I think we just run out the Captain and then offer the trade after getting some value out of our Mimic. We could not attack with the Mimic, but I think clearing a path for the Captain and removing as many creatures from the opponent as possible for our menacing Captain to connect is fine, so I think I'm okay with trading here. Opponent does take the trade. And then we'll just play a tapped Fetid Pools, say go. So our opponent did get 2 energy out of their Conduit, and we got a +1/+1 counter out of our Mimic. Not sure which is more valuable. Opponent with another Servant. Do they have a third land? They do, it's a tapped Thicket, so off to a relatively slow start given the turn 2 Servant. And we picked up a Dispersal. I think we just hit with the Captain and play a Rune Raider draw card. Alright, we found a Fatal Push, which can take care of this Servant nicely. Now our opponent kind of needs to answer what we've got going on here, and then hopefully we can sit back on our counterspell at some point. Another Attune. So what we don't want to see is a Whirler Virtuoso, since those 1/1 Thopters can be annoying. And we see a Swamp making an appearance. Our opponent likely has the Scarab God in their deck. There we see a Longtusk Cub, which we can kill with the Fatal Push, so not a big deal. Servant's gonna stay on defense. So we could Fatal Push the Cub, attack with the Captain, make a Pirate, but I kind of like keeping up our Lookout's Dispersal here, and I definitely want to be attacking to draw a card off of Ruined Raider. And we do need to answer the Cub at some point, so I think Fatal Pushing the Cub is fine. And then just attacking with our Menacing Pirate. And we're not gonna pay 2. So our opponent probably knows what's up, but I think we're in a fine spot here, even if we waste 3 mana, quote unquote. So let's just say go, draw a card off of Ruined Raider, find Metallic Mimic. And our opponent can't really afford to do nothing, since they're pretty behind on board. So let's see if we can counter something here. Glorybringer, yep, that's definitely worth a counterspell. Now we don't have an answer to the Scarab God, but looks like our opponent's not playing any blue and they're just on Jund. So that worked out. So up against Jund Energy, Vraska's Contempt could be okay, Walk the Plank could be okay. Don't think we want to overdo it on the Duresses. Don't need to worry about Whirler Virtuosos, or 1 Toughness Flyers are safe. Can probably shave on the Plunderers. And I think we shave on the Freebooter as well. Alright, this hand looks okay. Not super exciting since we don't have the untapped Stormtamer, so we can't Dispersal on 2. But we still have a Freebooter to disrupt the opponent early on. Alright, let's play the Fetid Pools, say go. Turn to Conduit once again. We could Metallic Mimic, we could have a look with our Freebooter. I kind of like taking a look with the Freebooter here just to know how we need to play the following few turns. Alright, our opponent has exactly 1 non-creature spell, and they're left with 2 Amet Eternals, so those are pretty aggressive cards here. Another Servant and another land. So those Amets could be a problem. 5/5s are pretty hard to block for our small pirates, but we did side in our Vraska's Contempt and our Walk the Plank, so those should be good. So one of the Amets is gone, Roadbound Crag's gone. Alright, Ruined Raider could be good, but I kind of want to keep up Lookout's Dispersal to counter the second Amet Eternal, since otherwise we're gonna have a hard time dealing with it. So I think we just hit for 1. And then play out the Stormtamer, say go. But now we're definitely in the spot where our opponent is not forced to play anything out, since they're ahead on board, so they can just not play anything into our counterspell. Hopefully they do. So they're just gonna hit us for a bunch. But from our perspective, if the second Amet resolves, we're in trouble. So Ether Hub was a draw for the turn, and if they just play a Servant, I'm also gonna counter it here, just to use up our mana. Yep, and that's what happens. So this does also shrink the Amet Eternal, which is relevant. So they only have Amet Eternal and an unknown card left. So we don't have enough mana to play Ruined Raider and keep up Dispersal, but we do have enough mana to play Metallic Mimic and keep up Dispersal. We can also play 2 Metallic Mimics, shrinking the Amets into a 2/2. That could also be decent, but then we still have the second Amet to deal with. So what I like doing here is just playing out Metallic Mimic, shrinking the Amet, naming Pirates, And then attacking for 1 with the Freebooter. And then just offering the double block on the Ammit Eternal. And then we still have the Dispersal up for the second Ammit. It is a 2-for-1 in the opponent's favor, but with a Ruined Raider in hand, I think that's fine. This could go poorly if our opponent has a cheap removal spell like a Lightning Strike. Instead, our opponent is main phasing the Ammit, means that we get to shrink the first one even further. So that's good. One card left for the opponent, and they have a 2/2 Ammit, which we happily trade with. They're attacking with both. Let's go to blocks. Block the Ammit, take a total of 5 thanks to Afflict. But now we should be stable. And Fatal Push also helps. So let's attack for 2. I think just play out a Ruined Raider, keep up Fatal Push. And we also get to keep up the Stormtamer's ability. Hostage Taker is nice, but did cost us 4 life, so that's scary. So I think we just trade here if our opponent attacks with the Servant. Glorybringer is a scary card here as well. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome, managed to beat Giant Energy. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw here with a decent looking hand. Can't play out the Stormtamer on turn 1, but we'll be able to play it out at some point here, as it's pretty cheap. So let's lead with Fetid Pools, so these Catacombs come into play untapped. Then on 2, we can probably just run out a Mimic. Opponent on a blue-black deck, with turn 2 Search for Azcanta, so looks like a control deck. Another Fatal Push is probably not going to be great in this matchup. So let's see here. Do we run out a Mimic? Do we run out Stormtamer? I think we go for the Mimic. Then next turn we can run out Stormtamer, keep up Dispersal. So hopefully no Fatal Push here. Opponent just passes. Let's go ahead and attack for 2. And then play out a Stormtamer. They're gonna Fatal Push the Mimic in response. So we could counter the Fatal Push here. And I think we actually do need to counter here, just because otherwise we don't have a lot of things going on. And hope our opponent can't censor back. Counterspell resolves. Stormtamer resolves, gets a counter. Hope our opponent doesn't have a sweeper effect here. Island goes to the graveyard, 4 mana. And Vraska's Contempt to exile the Mimic. Opponent gains 2 life, but at least we still have a 2/2 Stormtamer in play. Another Fetid Pools is not where we want to be. Let's attack for 2. And I actually think we main phase this Siren, since our opponent clearly didn't have a sweeper, and I don't want to get the Siren countered by a counterspell. So these 2 Fatal Pushes not looking great. Our best draw, I guess, would be a Ruined Raider if it resolves, just to provide some card advantage. Kitesail Freebooter would also be great, taking a look at the opponent's hand. Same with Duress. Well, our opponent's not doing anything, so they might have a hand full of counterspells for all we know. I think we just main phase a Fell Flagship, see if this gets countered. If it doesn't, it provides a nice boost. We're playing around Censor, and this can't get Essence Scattered, so it's gotta be a Disallow, which is fine. Let's get in for 5. Opponent with Consign to bounce or Siren. Yeah, I think that is fine. So they could cast the other half next turn, make us discard the 2 Fatal Pushes, which is fine. Question is whether or not we want to run out the Fetid Pools here, since that allows us to play around Censor when we replay the Siren. On the other hand, we could end up cycling the Fetid Pools in a few turns and maybe drawing into some more relevant spells. I think we keep it in hand here. And hopefully not run into Censor. Opponent puts a second Consign to Oblivion in the graveyard, and now they have a transformed Search for Azcanta. And looks like they're not gonna cast Oblivion, instead they're just gonna sit on their Azcanta here. So let's hit for 2. And now the question is, do we run out Metallic Mimic or keep up Dreamcaller Siren? I think I'm okay with running out the Mimic. Opponent casts Illumination in response. Means that they won't be able to use Azcanta here. Let's name Pirates. And I think we keep the Fetid Pools in hand, and I don't think we want to cycle it main phase just to keep up the Stormtamer's ability to protect the Mimic, which seems to be more relevant here. And by keeping up 2 mana we also represent another Dispersal, which the opponent might play around. So end of turn I think we do cycle. Find a Captain, untap, find Rune Raider, alright. So I think we start by attacking, hoping our opponent doesn't have a Gear Hulk. Even if they do, we can tap it down with the Siren before it gets to block. Instead our opponent takes 4. So I think we just run out Ruin Raider here. Still plays around Censor and kind of requires an answer from the opponent. Another Disallow, that's fine. Alright, let's pass it back. They do get to use Azcanta now, which is a scary part. Vraska's Contempt, not ideal, but at least we can counter it with the Stormtamer, preventing our opponent from gaining 2 life. And they probably want to use it in our turn, that way we don't get to use up our 1 mana that is otherwise unspent. So game 1 this matchup might be a little rough, but after Sideboard it should get a lot better once we add all those counter spells and more Duresses. A second Search for Azcanta, just to provide some card selection. And our opponent's casting the Contempt now, which I don't think they should. So we'll just counter it to prevent our opponent from gaining the life. They've got 1 card left, but they're not going to be able to use Azcanta for the turn. Alright, that's nice, so we can tap out for Captain and Plunderer, hope our opponent doesn't have a sweeper effect. So yeah, let's hit for 2 first, just in case, but I imagine if our opponent had another removal spell they would have used it already. Let's run out the Captain and the Plunderer. Alright, so now we've got lethal in play and another Dreamcaller Siren in hand. So just hoping our opponent doesn't have something like a Yahanis Expertise in their deck. Azcanta puts a Swamp in the graveyard and they drew a Swamp for the turn, it looks like. They're gonna cycle a Fetid Pools, alright, that's promising. They still have a shot at spinning the wheel with Azcanta, but then they only have 3 mana left, so they can't even cast something like a Vraska's Contempt. Torrential Gearhulk flashing back Vraska's Contempt is somewhat annoying, but we can tap down the Gearhulk for a turn with the Siren. Alright, they did find a Fatal Push for the Pirate, that's good. We still have the Plunderer that can put an additional counter on itself. Let's just attack for 5. Opponent's gonna use Azcanta now. Hopefully they don't find a second Fatal Push, or a third rather. Essence Extraction. Well, that's kind of annoying, but we can negate the life gain by Fatal Pushing our own creature. Let's put an additional counter on the Plunderer. And I guess we should use the Dreamcaller Siren now, that way it gets a counter and is out of Essence Extraction range. The downside is, of course, if our opponent did have a Gearhulk, now we can't tap it down. But I guess the opponent would use a Gearhulk in our turn, and we want to run out the Siren so that it can attack next turn anyway, so I think this is just better. And now we have Fatal Push to prevent the life gain from the extraction. So our opponent needs to find something pretty good here. I guess they are in a position now to cast the Oblivion to make us discard the Fatal Pushes. But that's still not the end of the world, since we can beat the Essence Extraction if our opponent doesn't do anything else. Alright, we're gonna use the Essence Extraction now. Let's cast Fatal Push. Fatal Push resolves. Opponent stays at 3. Do they have an answer to the Siren? They do another Vraska's Contempt, that's unfortunate. Well, our opponent's back up to 5. They won't be able to use a Skanta here. But Ruin Raider's perfect, so we can play out Ruin Raider. And I guess the ideal draw off of Ruin Raider would be a Lookout's Dispersal. But I guess our opponent has enough mana where they can pay for it, so maybe we just want to find another threat off of the raid trigger. Instead we find a swamp. Our opponent has a few draw steps here to find more removal. They're just saying go. Alright, our opponent's empty-handed. They get 1 spin with Askanta, and we've got Lookout's Dispersal to counter anything too expensive, so I like our chances here. Alright, and we got there. On to sideboarding against blue-black control. Want to bring in our counter spells, our Spell Pierce, Duress. Want to take out Hostage Taker. Want to take out our Fatal Pushes. And I think we just shave on 2 Plunderers here. Last time we took out the Mimics, I think I prefer taking out a Plunderer. And try this. We could try a Deadeye Tracker to stop Askanta from transforming and to counter Torrential Gearhulk, getting something back, but I think that's a little too narrow, so I think we'll try without. This hand looks acceptable, a little heavy on the lands, but we can cycle the Fetid Pools and we've got Freebooter for some disruption. Find a Lookout's Dispersal. I think we actually run out Fetid Pools tapped here, since we might end up needing 4 untapped lands on 4 if we don't draw any more lands here. So we can lead with the Freebooter, and then on 3 play out the Flagship. I think we do lead with the Freebooter rather than the Captain. Could get Essence Scattered or Censored. Gets Essence Scattered, alright, that's fine. Opponent's got a 3rd land, so now they have Disallow at the ready. Alright, another Freebooter is nice. I think we go with the Freebooter once again over Flagship or Captain. Opponent has Fatal Push, but we still get to take a look at the opponent's hand here. Alright, so there's the Gearhulk, Fatal Push, Supreme Will, Fetid Pools. Well, those are some pretty good cards. So next turn, if we run out the Captain, they can Supreme Will it, and we don't have the Pirate in play for a Dispersal for 2. I guess they can let the Captain resolve with the idea of Fatal Pushing it. So I guess we hope they do that, but I guess Duress also works. So we can just Duress, take the Supreme Will or the Fatal Push, depending. Duress the opponent. See a hand of Field of Ruin, Supreme Will, Fatal Push. So we could just take the Supreme Will here, and this turn play out Flagship, and then next turn run out the Captain and have Lookout's Dispersal available. We could just take the Fatal Push, run out the Captain, and their opponent might use the Supreme Will on the Captain. Yeah, you know what, I think I'll take the Fatal Push. And then run out the Captain. I'm actually not too unhappy for opponent counters our Captain here, since I kind of want to use the Dispersal on the Gearhulk. So Captain gets countered. We know our opponent still has Gearhulk and Field of Ruin in hand, so let's pass it back. Opponent runs out Field of Ruin. Alright, another Dispersal. We're just gonna say go here, since if we play out a Flagship, our opponent could just main phase the Gearhulk. Alright, Metallic Mimic is good. So that can name Pirates. And they're gonna Disallow. I guess now we could just run out the Fell Flagship and hope our opponent doesn't main phase the Gearhulk on Supreme Will, since they might want to try and ambush the Fell Flagship. It's a little risky here to tap out for the Flagship, but hopefully our opponent just passes. Excellent, so they let us untap. So now we have Dispersal back up for the Gearhulk. Still need to find a threat to crew the Flagship with. Opponent's just gonna hang on to the Gearhulk. Search for Askanta. Now that's bad news, Since that's gonna take over the game and we can't even counter it with the Dispersal, we would have to use 2 Dispersals just to counter the Search for Azcanta, and then our opponent still has a Gearhulk left. I think we need to let the Search for Azcanta resolve here, as much as it pains me. Alright, Siren Stormtamer. Get in there. So next turn Azcanta transforms. Swamp is not really what we needed here, so let's just attack for 2. Opponent's finally gonna run out the Gearhulk. Gonna counter it. Opponent takes 2. I guess we run out the land, since Consigned to Oblivion lets us discard 2. Anyways, Fetid Pools goes to the graveyard, Azcanta transforms, and now it's gonna be an uphill battle. Spell Pierce not looking too great here. So let's just attack for 2. Maybe we need to reconsider those trackers to empty the opponent's graveyard. Another Gearhulk gets countered as well. Negate. Alright, got a nice use out of Spell Pierce. So things could have been much worse had the Gearhulk resolved. And now it's their Azcanta versus our Flagship plus Stormtamer. I like Azcanta more in the spot for sure, but Negate's not bad. So let's keep getting in for 2. Hopefully find another threat at some point to go with the Fell Flagship. Essence Extraction. Opponent could cast that on the Stormtamer, we could counter it to prevent the life gain, or we could negate it to keep a threat in play. Opponent's happy just saving the extraction for a more problematic permanent, but alright, they're gonna do it end of turn. Think we just keep the negate in hand and just use the Stormtamer's ability, since we need to try and protect more valuable threats like Ruin Raiders, for example. Another Dispersal. Well, hopefully we find a threat at some point here, since every turn that goes by their opponent gets to use Azcanta is a turn we're falling further and further behind. Another Search for Azcanta, alright, that's not too bad. Definitely don't want to negate that. That resolves. Metallurgic Summonings, definitely want to use our Dispersal here. Alright, find a captain, which can crew the Fell Flagship. Opponent needs to discard. Discard Essence Scatter, alright, that's nice. We might be getting back into the game. Vraska's Contempt, I think, is worth a negate at this point, since getting to make a pirate token is a big deal here. Do need to draw another pirate for that to work. Perfect. Alright, so yeah, I think we just go for the greediest line possible. Run out Ruin Raider, crew the Flagship, attack, try and make a pirate token. Supreme Will, looking at the top 4, alright, that's promising, since they might have to end up discarding unless they find a Fatal Push. So let's crew. Attack. And our opponent scoops it up, so we would have been able to attack for 6, make our opponent discard their only card, make a pirate, and draw a card with Ruin Raider. So that's just too much to overcome for the opponent. Never thought we would end up winning this game, but there you go. Blue-black pirates apparently pretty decent against control decks. So I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.